Marilyn, thank you very much for that really kind introduction. I'm standing here with mixed emotions. First, I'm concerned about how I can keep you engaged, having had such a lovely dinner. At the same time, I'm very passionate about what I do, about our beloved continent Africa, and so whenever I'm given the opportunity to talk about what I do for the African continent, I would usually not pass up for anything else. So I do want to thank you all for giving me this opportunity to share a few thoughts with you. I want to start first by commending the organizers of this forum for an outstanding and first-class program. I know that this is the 9th edition of this program, but that is already one of the well-known events on the calendar of important Africa events. I want to particularly thank Nick Capital, and maybe Nick, you can stand up and be acknowledged. For inviting me and many of us others from Nigeria. I want to acknowledge Nick, not just for inviting me, but for the great work that he did as Reuters chief correspondent in Nigeria, because he created a better understanding of my beloved nation. Nick, thank you very much. I have a special affinity to Columbia University for a number of reasons, but particularly the business school, because two of my greatest bosses are actually alumni of the business school. I started my work life with one of them, Chief Dennis Odife, and I remember at my interview thinking, I want to be like Chief Dennis Odife. And I'm still aspiring to be like Chief Dennis Odife. The second one, Chief Dennis Odife is a Nigerian veteran investment banker. The second one is Kofi Buckner, who was your guest speaker last year at a similar event. Kofi Buckner was my boss at the African Development Bank. He was group treasurer, and 2 group treasurers after him, I became group treasurer at the African Development Bank. I'm still learning from Kofi Buckner. So I do want to say that I've got such a close affinity with Columbia University, and I want to congratulate all of you, including those who have 33 days to go, as well as those who got awards tonight. This year's forum has covered trade partnerships for Africa, the information revolution that we're seeing in our continent, the strengthening of small and medium-scale enterprises and private sector in African countries, managing sovereign wealth funds, the challenges and prospects of African banks, and very importantly, women's engagement in Africa's economic transformation. I believe that the discussions held yesterday and today certainly give context to the theme of the thoughts that I will share with you today, transforming Africa through world-class capital markets. For those who want to take a nap while I'm speaking, I want to share with you that I have 4 messages. And so you can take a nap after I've given you the 4 messages. But I think if you keep awake, you'll hear a little bit more about them. The first is that this is Africa's time. The second is that the opportunities that exist in Africa are enormous. The third is that there are challenges. so you need to be careful as you seek to tap those opportunities. And finally, world-class capital markets will indeed enable Africa realize its enormous potential. So those who want to fall asleep now can fall asleep. Let me start with what I believe is a general sense that all of us here have of Africa, that it is Africa's time, by sharing thoughts that you probably have heard through the day, but also that many analysts have talked about. First, we have made great strides from a political point of view. About 25 years ago, there were probably less than 5 democracies in Africa. And now there are more than 25 democracies. Real GDP grew from 2000 to 2008 by 5% on average. And this growth is not what we've seen in the past, which is usually associated with natural resources. It is diversified by sector and by country. Also exciting is that 6 of the fastest growing economies in the world, the 10 fastest growing economies in the world, are actually African. And I know that you all already know them: Angola, Chad, Ethiopia, Mozambique, Nigeria, my home country, and Rwanda. As I said, while in the past, a lot of the growth that you've seen in Africa has really been driven by natural resources. McKinsey's recent research show that natural resources, directly and indirectly, contribute only 1/3 to the growth that we've seen in Africa. The rest of the 2/3 are contributed by telecommunications, banking, retail, wholesale, and manufacturing. I think this has been driven very much by a number of factors. One of them is that we did think about some of the issues that Europe is thinking about today, 20 to 30 years ago. As you all know, most African countries are enjoying macroeconomic stability. Most African countries have reasonable debt levels, reasonable budget deficits, single-digit inflation rates. And you'll agree with me that many African countries will qualify to become members of the European Union sooner than many European countries can qualify today. So I know that there's quite a bit that we can teach Europe. But I think even more exciting is the demographics of the African continent. You have a youthful population, you have growing incomes, and you have a rising middle class. Where are the opportunities in Africa? As I say, they're in several sectors and areas. I know that Mr. MOV00B, the Deputy CEO of Oando, talked about some of it in his keynote address. There are also the traditional ones in solid minerals across the continent. But infrastructure is big. Every day I hear a new amount as to how much we need to invest in Africa to get the infrastructure up to speed. The multilateral agencies say it's between $90 billion and $120 billion. We've already seen the revolution in information and communications technology. And today, the number of mobile phone subscribers in Africa are estimated at 600 million, with a penetration rate of 60% compared to less than 5% 10 years ago, and expected to be up to 1 billion by 2020. I believe it will probably be sooner, given how many cellular phones I'm expected to have in Nigeria myself, even though I rely on only one. But I think what is even more significant in the revolution that we've seen in telecommunications is what is to come in the future, which is the fact that the revenue per subscriber is expected to rise, just as the number of subscribers will rise. Energy, I know it will be bigger than telecommunications. Because if you know the challenges that we face in countries like my own country, where 40 businesses pay 40% more than they should pay for running their businesses because they have to provide their own energy. When we do transform energy in Nigeria and in many other countries, it will be big. Same thing with water, transport, be it roads, rails, or ports. We heard about financial services earlier today. Most Africans are still unbanked. I am personally excited about what mobile telephony will do to the banking sector. I'm excited about what a cashless society will do in my own country, because people still carry money in what Nigerians call Ghana must go bags, or what Chinese call the Chinese check bags. I am excited about the potential when we have indeed a cashless society. But even more important is some of what we're seeing across Africa, some of the financial inclusion initiatives, including focusing on Islamic finance as part of a way to bring more people to be able to leverage financial services. I'm excited about what could happen if we indeed address the housing deficit across Africa. In my own country, it is estimated at 20 million units in terms of deficit. I'm excited about potentially what could happen in the fast-moving consumer goods and light manufacturing sector, given rising incomes and a youthful population. A survey that was done in Nigeria indicated that 12 million Nigerians plan by 2013 to purchase either a refrigerator, a washing machine, or microwave oven. So if you haven't decided what to do, you could sell one of these products to the 12 million Nigerians. Agriculture. It came up earlier today. Agriculture is big. I think Razia Khan was the one who said this morning, or this afternoon, that 60% of the world's uncultivated arable land is in Africa. When you see that Côte d'Ivoire has maintained its leadership role in cocoa, despite some of the challenges it's had over the last 10 years, you can imagine what agriculture can do if someone is actually really investing in agriculture and doing some of what we're seeing in the North African countries, in Kenya or in South Africa, who in my opinion are leading the way. In my own country, after years of underinvestment and neglect, we're making significant strides in creating an attractive environment for the private sector, in transforming yields such that we can stop spending $10 billion importing food into Nigeria. Most of it for rice that is 12 years old, or wheat, which is all an acquired taste. I am so excited because we have an outstanding Minister of Agriculture who's been leading the transformation of agriculture in Nigeria. Watch that space for Nigeria, but watch that space for all of Africa. Of course, I'm a convert, I'm an evangelist, so I will talk about the opportunities in Africa because I live them, I see them. But there are also challenges. And anybody who's been following me on Google or who's watched a YouTube video of my saga with our National Assembly will know that it is challenging to do things in Africa. It's certainly more challenging to be a regulator in my own country than to be a businessman. I'm sure Mr. MOV00B will agree with me today. Or you think it's still better to be it's still easier to be a regulator? Different challenges. So there are opportunities, but there are challenges. And I think those challenges are very important ones for us to think about as we think about doing business in Africa. First, I think the politics is still a big issue. We've had an absolutely outstanding 25 years in terms of building democracies across Africa. But what we're seeing is difficult transitions. You saw what happened in Ivory Coast. You saw what even happened in Senegal, where an 85-year-old man was still trying to hold on to power after 2 terms. But I think you also saw what the people can do when they decide to take a position. And I'm delighted that Senegal stood for what it believed in, and that Macky Sall is today the president of Senegal. Of course, I'm disappointed with the coups in Guinea-Bissau and in Mali. But I do think that there will be challenges. I think what is important is how we manage those challenges. And West Africa, particularly given the leadership that Alassane Ouattara showed with respect to managing the issues of Mali, what we just need to do is make sure that when those challenges arise, that we do have leaders who can stand up and make sure that they deal with them. So I do think the politics is still an issue. I do think there's a dearth of skills, and that for many countries across Africa, that the educational system is broke. In my country, it is broke. The National Economic Management Team, which is led by our president, one of the areas that we're tackling in Nigeria is really to revamp the educational system. First, to make sure that it is relevant to transforming Nigeria, that we have many more engineers that are truly learning and coming out of universities and tertiary levels of education in Nigeria. And I think it's the same thing for many other African countries. I do believe that the incidence of poverty is a big issue, and particularly the skewed income distribution. Of course, you will all agree with me that unemployment is a big issue. It's a big issue across the world, but I think it's even bigger in Africa because most of our population is young people. And young people are dynamic, they're creative, and if you're not letting them use their skills for the right things, they will use their skills for the wrong things. So tackling unemployment is so critical, particularly youth unemployment. The business climate issues, in my view, are particularly important. Bismarck Rouhani talked about the sanctity of contracts. I do think those are very, very critical issues for a business climate. Investor protection issues. Investors, whether they be domestic or international, would like to be certain that their assets are safe for them to invest. In Nigeria, I often say that no one, not even Nigerians, invest in Nigeria because they love Nigeria. People invest where they feel their assets are safe. So investor protection issues are very, very critical. I do think that the perception that corruption is still prevalent in Africa is a big, big issue. I feel there have been significant strides that have been taken across the continent to eliminate opportunities for rent seeking, and that we have tougher regulators across Africa who are prepared to demonstrate that they have zero tolerance for anything that is wrong, and who do not care whose ox is gold. So I do think there are challenges. I do believe that Africa is making strides to tackle those challenges. But more importantly, I believe that those challenges are opportunities for any business person. Let me now talk about why I feel that world-class capital markets will transform Africa. It's first of all because that's what I do. I'm trying to build a world-class capital market. So that's why I think it will transform Africa. But more importantly, I believe that world-class capital markets are key to transforming our continent, because we can better leverage the wealth that we have in terms of natural resources and human resources, and that indeed it can enable us realize our full potential and address the socio-economic challenges that we face. And this is because world-class capital markets engender investor confidence. They ensure breadth and depth in terms of product offerings. They're characterized by market integrity. They're ones that have a sound regulatory framework. They're known for having a strong and transparent disclosure and accountability regime, and they foster good corporate governance and certainly ensure a robust, fair, and efficient marketplace. I've already said they're enablers of socio-economic development. They foster a meritocracy, because resources go to the better performing companies where you have world-class capital markets. They promote good corporate governance. And just before I came up, someone walked up to me and was talking about the work that he and the Commissioner of Finance for Rivers State had done prior to the Commissioner, Mr. Chamberlain Peterside, becoming the Commissioner of Finance, what they had done in hand-holding. Sorry, since some people on your table are clapping for you, Mr. Chamberlain Peterside, you need to stand up and be acknowledged. But I'm sure you'll even applaud by the time I finish telling you this story. What this gentleman was telling me was that prior, I think 12 years prior to when Mr. Chamberlain Peterside became Commissioner of Finance for Rivers State, they were thinking about how can they contribute to their own state in Nigeria. And one of the things they did subsequently was to talk to Rivers State about getting rated by credit rating agencies. And I believe you have ratings from Fitch and, was it Standard & Poor's? It's the other one, Standard & Poor's and Fitch. The reason I'm telling this story is that people think that people go to capital markets just so that they can borrow and raise money, which is of course why people go to capital markets. But one of the reasons I enjoy what I do is that there is much more that capital markets provide beyond medium to long-term finance. I think they create an environment that fosters transparency and openness. And the reason I want to give an example of states in Nigeria is that states in Nigeria over the last few years have been coming to the capital markets in Nigeria to raise bonds, to fund infrastructure and other key projects. Lagos State has been a pioneer in that regard. But before you can raise funds in any capital market, if you're a state government, if you're a municipality, you have to get rated. So there is another party that is independent of the state, that assesses the state, that is independent of a regulator like the SEC that assesses you. So you're already creating an opportunity for the citizens of that state to have independent information about what is going on in that state. Of course, Mr. Peterside was invited to come and fix the finances. And he's built systems, such that you can record and follow and monitor every transaction that Rivers State does today. It's one of the states that's delivered dividends to its people. There are, I believe you have 250 primary and secondary schools that have been recently built. I think there are more. I think there are 250 secondary schools and I don't know how many primary schools across the state. If you ever visit Nigeria and you have a chance to visit Rivers State, I encourage you to visit the secondary schools. I am not the only one who, when I first visited the secondary school that I was taken to by the governor of Rivers State, I actually thought it was a university in the United States because of the quality of the facilities that children have, such that they can get the same education that you will get anywhere in the world. This is a secondary school. They're working on a monorail. They're able to generate their own power in Rivers State, and they're doing many other projects. And they've applied to come to the market to raise approximately $1.5 billion from the Nigerian capital markets to help accelerate the work that they're doing in transforming Rivers State. And I can say the same for Lagos State and for many other states in Nigeria. So in addition to providing medium to long-term funding for these states so that they can fund infrastructure and their socio-economic development, what the citizens of these states have is an opportunity to see how the funds in their states are managed, to see how the states are governed. And certainly, neither Fitch nor Standard & Poor's will necessarily be dependent on Rivers State. So I'm making this point because I do want us to remember that it's more than money. It's more than raising funds to fund your businesses or to fund the transformation of society. It is really about creating openness and transparency and bringing all the parties to bear in building what people will see, the citizens of states, of a government, of a country will see as one that is working on the basis of best practice. World-class markets, of course, cultivate entrepreneurship. And when you travel in any city or in any rural area in Africa, you'll see that there are many entrepreneurs across Africa. World-class capital markets indeed create job opportunities that harness the skills and the entrepreneurial zeal of Africans. And world-class markets, of course, fund business expansions and new opportunities. And as I've already indicated with the examples of states in Nigeria, they provide governments medium to long-term funds to finance infrastructure and other important projects that will transform society. I do believe that world-class markets facilitate the diversification of an economy. Just look at South Africa, where the market cap of the companies listed on the Johannesburg Stock Exchange are almost 3 times the GDP of South Africa. Or look at Tunisia, that has one of the most diversified economies in Africa, and see what capital markets can do in facilitating the diversification of an economy. I believe world-class capital markets enable agents to pool, price, and exchange risk, and that's what also builds economies. Most importantly, world-class capital markets encourage savings and create wealth. I often say that one of the differences between the paths that Asian countries have seen over the last 30 years and African countries have seen is the difference in how much the states saved or how much the individuals in those states saved. I'd like to just say a few words about creating wealth. Earlier today, during the session on navigating risks in African banks, I did give the example of Mo Ibrahim and Aliko Dangote. What I'd like to do is maybe rehash those examples that I gave and share a few more examples. Most of you already know Mo Ibrahim, who was, of course, the visionary founder of Celtel in 1998. 14 years ago. At that time, the continent only had 2 million mobile phone lines. Remember, I mentioned that today, the estimate is that there are about 600 mobile phone lines. Some people actually think it's almost 700 million mobile phone lines. But Mo Ibrahim, 7 years after he started Celtel, sold Celtel for $3.4 billion. And I believe the capital markets enabled him to realize that value. As you may know, Dangote, Aliko Dangote, in 2011 was announced as Forbes' richest, Africa richest individual. I think he was actually the Forbes black richest individual. I'm not that rich, so it's very hard for me to talk about it. But this was enabled primarily, well, first enabled by his hard work over the years, but he made the #1 list primarily because of the listing of Dangote Cement. Because of course Forbes uses transparent and publicly available information for their decisions. In 2010, Dangote Cement assets were integrated with Benue Cement, which was owned by the Dangote Group of companies, and was listed. And today, it represents 25% of the total market capitalization of the Nigerian Stock Exchange. Because of this, of course, he jumped from the 200th position to the number 51, surpassing Abramovich, I could never say his name right, Richard Branson, and of course Oprah, who I love very much. But it also enhanced the brand of the Dangote Group, opening up funding sources across the world. And today, he's able to say that he will build the largest cement plant in the world in Nigeria because of what the capital markets has done in terms of providing him resources from the capital markets, but also providing other funding sources for him to transform his business. I'd already mentioned that MOV00B spoke, I think he gave a keynote earlier today. MOV00B, as you know, is the Deputy CEO of Rwanda. Wale Tinubu, MOV00B, and a few other of their colleagues really understand what it means to unlock value through the capital markets. Their company was originally listed on the Nigerian Stock Exchange, and a number of years later, they listed on the Johannesburg Stock Exchange. And I know they're looking to list on other stock exchanges around the world in the not so distant future. Well done, MOV00B, for the great work that you've been doing. I'm sharing these examples for a number of reasons, because these are examples to inspire you, but to show you real-life examples of why I'm excited about the opportunities that Africa offers. A few months ago, the CEO of the Nigerian Stock Exchange announced that through 2011, they had spent some time developing a pipeline of companies in several sectors that they expect to list on the Nigerian Stock Exchange in the next 5 years. There are more than 500 companies in several sectors. And just in case you think this is a fairy tale, I know that Segun Oshuntoko talked about a company earlier today that produces fertilizer in Nigeria. He was sitting at my table and I asked him if it was Notori that he was referring to, because Notori is transforming agriculture in Nigeria. I believe it was in 2006 that Jite Okoloka led a team that purchased moribund assets with probably, at best, 20% capacity utilization for the plant that they purchased, which was producing urea fertilizer. Today, that plant is operating at 100% capacity. It's exporting urea around the world, including far-flung places as Brazil. Jite, earlier this week, was in Japan to sign an agreement with Mitsubishi to build another plant which will produce 1 million metric tons of fertilizer in the next 3 years. I know that ECP and other private equity firms are enjoying the benefits of what Notori has done. But I also know Notori is coming onto the market very, very soon. So I give this example to say that there is a lot that's happening on Africa. And you need to make sure that you don't lose what a market that is evolving in the way that Africa is evolving, you don't lose the first mover advantage. Because the kinds of returns that people are making in Africa today, you will not see them in the future when everybody is there. So don't be part of this well-kept secret that has been going on for a few years now. You've got experience, you've got interest. So I encourage you to focus on Africa, to understand the challenges, but basically to see the opportunities. But to also understand that capital markets will enable the transformation of Africa. I didn't want to be very long, and Nick made me promise that I wouldn't be very long. So I'll just end by saying that I'm sure that many of us have different reasons why we've come to the African Economic Forum. Some of us are seeking career opportunities. Some of us are seeking investment opportunities. And forgive me if I say this, some of us may be seeking life partners. It's okay to seek life partners. I mean, 22 years ago, I was probably doing that. But some of us are here simply because we care about Africa. Whichever group you belong to, or if you belong to all of those groups, you can realize your dream and also enable Africa realize its dream. Thank you.
Now we will pick the winners of the Avid Air raffle. So I will ask you to pick two numbers from 1 to 100, and the people who are assigned to those numbers will be notified via email.
I'll pick 50 because the capital markets in Nigeria is celebrating 50 years of regulating the Nigerian capital markets. And I will pick 1. That's the second one. Thank you.
Thank you.
to make the world healthier.
Maximize that.
What is the industry? I'm sorry? Global health policy management.
Spanish real estate. What do you think? Yes, sir. Grow Africa. Grow Africa. What do you mean by Grow Africa? What do you mean?
The people, the energy, the collaboration, the spirit.
Collaboration, networking,
the networking,
sharing ideas,
selling ideas,
building infrastructures, right?
And let me get you saying that.
Yeah, basically, you know, we think the continent can do better. Having a military command could be an option. We can build security exchange commission without a security to defend it, to protect it. Resources, sharing ideas, networking, building human resources, infrastructures, and developing a standing military command to protect those resources and infrastructures. Otherwise, it's a time waster. That's what we think, basically. Okay, so education of our people, networking with our people, sharing ideas, building infrastructures, building from small-scale businesses, micro to macro businesses, from subsistence agriculture to commercial, then to industrialized agriculture. In other words, mechanized agriculture. By so doing, we can feed ourselves. Then we can compete at the global market as equal partners, not as a junior partner, equal partners. When we do that, Africa will stand and be free. Thank you, sir.
Oh, very nice.
Thank you, sir.
I want to ask you a question. The presentation of tsunami.
Yeah, exactly. What do you think?
When is gonna be in the computer?
Next week. It's a lot of video taping next week.
I know.
Hopefully next
But
week
that
we
one
download
we
it.
want to.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Hey guys.
Hi, you Mark? I'm fine. Like that.
Oh, that's exciting.
had over 450 people, I believe, this year, so that's a step up from last year. Yesterday, Mr. Sanusi said that Africans need to do a better job of telling their story. As we began to come up with the idea of this forum, Africa Reclaiming Africa, we sought to do precisely just that. We hope that in the panels that you have sat in the speakers that you have listened to, and the conversations that you've had with fellow colleagues who are here, that you've been encouraged by the good work that Africans are doing in their continent, and that you are encouraged to join them and do that as well. We wanted to take a quick pause to say thank you to the many people who have been instrumental in helping us pull off this forum. As you know, there are so many logistics to coordinate and so many little pieces, but we have so much support from our speakers. So I first wanted to stop and ask if are there any panelists and speakers in the room, if you could please stand so we can give you a hand. Any panelists and speakers? Can we please give them a hand? And also, we had a large team of volunteers from from 4 different schools, from the Mailman School of Public Health, from the Business School, from the School of International and Public Affairs, as well as the Law School. So volunteers, if you're here, committee chairs, please stand up so we can give you a round of applause. Don't be shy. Where are you? Yes, thank you very much. And so I'll turn it over to my colleague Ari, because we have many more people to thank. Thank you.
Thank you, Frida. I'm going to take this opportunity to thank you for allowing me to, in a really brief manner, close this event. Tonight, to add to Frida, I really want to thank the whole organization for helping us, but seriously, really want to thank the experienced speakers that we had. Thank you for coming. Thank you for joining us and take time off your schedule, really coming here and engaging the youth and helping us find solutions for the future of Africa. I think the last thing that we really want to do tonight is really thank the co-chairs of this event. I'm going to ask them to actually come up here so everybody could actually upload them once I'm done. Engo, Wari Hari, and Fode Sabo. I just really wanted to tell these 2 guys that the work that they've done has been really tremendous. Ngowar is a co-chair from the business school, and Fode is a co-chair from the School of International Affairs. These 2 have managed to lead and manage 4 different institutions within Columbia University and make them work together, despite the fact that all 4 universities or all 4 institutions, from the business school, the law school, the public health school, and the international public affairs school, are inherently different institutions. They made them work together in a really timely manner in order to produce such a great event. I know I am in a team. Honestly, I'm never the guy. I think everybody here will know, and they will tell you, I am not the guy with the soft words. I'm not the guy with the kind words. But I will tell you honestly today, after this, last 2 days, you guys have done a really great job. And I wanted to tell you that I've learned a lot about management and leadership from you too. And I think I'm going to take all these lessons as we graduate next month. So thank you very much for the work. Thank you.
I'll be brief, but I just wanted to thank everyone for coming out today. I really feel fortunate to have been, to have worked alongside Fode throughout the past 3 or 4 months that we sort of pulled this together, and it's really good to see sort of everything kind of materialize and come to fruition. So I also wanted to say that the night is not over yet, and we look forward to the after party. So thank you once again for coming out, and we hope to see you next year.
I don't think I have much to add to that. Just want to thank everyone for
coming out. You know, especially I know one person, you know, two individuals I want to, you know, to highlight Zimuzu, Ida. You know, if you guys can please stand up, logistics chair, making everything happen, you know, the way it happened, when it was supposed to happen. You know, they were the champions and who were basically taking their order. So we worked as a team, as you know, Arab said. And if these are the group of leaders that, you know, Africa has tomorrow, I'm proud and I'm looking forward to working alongside every one of you guys in this room. Thank you.
The dance floor is now free, so let's the after party begin.
Ladies and gentlemen, I want to go by the name DJ Zaga of House Finest. This is Africa